Hi, folks. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the wildest stories that I've seen in a long time. And just a word of warning, some of the issues and topics that we're going to be discussing today are obscene and graphic in nature. Now, this involves a JPMorgan executive who is being accused, according to the Daily Mail, of turning a mail broker, her employee, into what's being described as an office sex slave. The woman pictured here is Lorna Hagini. She is 37, an executive in JPMorgan Chase's leveraged finance division, and as of now, she has not publicly responded to this lawsuit. The lawsuit alleges that Hagini used her power to sexually harass and abuse a junior male employee, including drugging him, subjecting him to racial abuse, and threatening his career when he refused her sexual advances. She is accused of coercing this married banker into non-consensual and humiliating sexual acts over months, despite his pleas for her to stop. Her accuser claims she admitted to drugging him on multiple occasions, and during one encounter allegedly berated him as he cried while she performed oral sex on him against his will. The complaint was filed Monday. The plaintiff is anonymously identified as John Doe, and he says he's staying anonymous to protect his family. He accuses JPMorgan of enabling the alleged abuse and retaliating against him after he reported it, claiming the firm placed him on involuntary leave, destroyed his reputation, and allowed threats against him to continue while he and others faced no consequences. Now, neither Hagini nor JPMorgan have responded to the lawsuit. However, JPMorgan has provided a statement in response to this story to the Daily Mail. But before we get to that, we should look at the details of the story, which are blowing up on X. Now, according to the complaint, this allegedly began in May 2024 when Hagini dropped her pen near John Doe's desk and, while bending down, rubbed his leg and squeezed his calf, then remarked, "Oh, did you play basketball in college? I love basketball players. They get me so wet." From there, John Doe claims the advances became more explicit and more frequent. Later that month, Hagini allegedly invited him out for drinks. Doe declined, and she allegedly responded saying, if you don't F me soon, I'm going to effing ruin you. Never forget, I own you. He claims she propositioned him multiple times in the office, including asking for a birthday BJ for the brown boy, my little brown boy. He says he continued to resist, and she escalated the threats, telling him that if he wanted to be promoted to executive director, he would need to start pleasing her, saying things like, "You're going to need to earn it, my little Arab boy toy." The complaint describes incidents where she allegedly groped him under the table, spat on her hands, and ran her hands over his neck and head. Eventually, he says harassment escalated into sexual assault, with 2 witnesses cited as corroborating parts of his account. He further alleges that Hagini used escalating threats and racial abuse to coerce him into sexual acts, and that she admitted to drugging him, basically roofing him, and using other substances to incapacitate him and facilitate those sexual encounters. He also claims she used her executive position to access his bank account and track his movements. In the summer of 2024, he says she showed up at an apartment where he was staying, made sexual advances he rejected, and then threatened his career directly, saying something to the effect of, "Do you want to get promoted or not? Do you want a future at JPMorgan? It's that simple." The complaint alleges she then removed her shirt, fondled herself, and insulted his wife, saying, "I bet your little Asian fishhead wife doesn't have these cannons." He describes begging her to stop, saying, "I'm very uncomfortable. Please, Lorna, please, I'm begging you," and claims she laughed and made further racist remarks, including saying, "At least his genitals didn't taste like curry." Now, over the following months, he says the abuse continued both at work and in public, with repeated reminders that she owned him and controlled his promotion and bonus. He claims she told him, "Do you think you're in good standing if you don't have me in your corner? Do you really think management wants some brown boy Indian leading originations? If you don't F my brains out tonight, I'm going to sabotage your promotion." He says that under fear of retaliation, he eventually relented, and that one encounter was overheard by a second witness in an adjoining room. He also claims she later admitted to drugging him with roofies and an erection enhancing substance. Fearing retaliation and doubting the company would protect him, he began looking for other jobs, but alleges that Hagini and other senior managers sabotaged his opportunities with negative references. Now, in May 2025, he claims he filed a formal written complaint with JPMorgan detailing what he described as race and gender discrimination, harassment, and severe sexual abuse. He says within a week, the company retaliated. He received anonymous threatening calls, including one saying, "Just wait till you're back in New York, brown boy. You better stay away, snitch." In June 2025, he claims he received a voicemail from someone claiming to be a JPMorgan manager telling him he wasn't welcome because of his skin color. He also alleges that within days of filing his complaint, he was reprimanded, locked out of company systems, and effectively sidelined, while those he accused faced no action. He says he's been diagnosed with PTSD and continues to struggle financially due to the damage to his reputation. Now, all of me said, JPMorgan's response is the exact opposite. A spokesperson stated that a thorough internal investigation found no evidence to support the accusations. They said they do not believe there is any merit to the claims made by John Doe and emphasized that while multiple employees cooperated with the investigation, the complainant refused to participate and declined to provide information central to supporting his allegations. So right there, you have two completely opposing narratives, one alleging extreme abuse and retaliation, the other saying there's nothing to see here, folks. And that's why this story is exploding online outside of just how salacious the details are. This isn't just about the allegations. It's just how strange the entire scenario is. You've got memes and people claiming they're applying to work at JPMorgan while others in finance are saying this doesn't resemble anything they've ever seen in that environment. At the same time, you have to ask yourselves, what would happen if the genders were reversed in this scenario? If this situation were indeed a male executive harassing a female junior employee, the truth wouldn't even matter right out the gate. The guy's career would be totally over. The moment the complaint were made, the moment that this story broke, there would be no jokes, no memes, no ambiguity. This guy would be under fire. His family would be doxxed. His life would effectively be over. We've seen that MeToo era playbook unfold time and time again. You have immediate outrage, immediate condemnation, corporate statements, investigations, media pressure. He would be done before a single fact were fully established. Right now, we have the complete opposite. It's just fragmented. Mostly men simping over this woman, and to a large extent, doubting the fact that any of this is credible. Some going as far as speculating that this man, the John Doe, crafted the entire story in order to provide some kind of cover for the fact that he cheated on his wife. Now, obviously, that's all highly speculative, though my gut reaction is skepticism. Not because abuse of power can't happen in this sort of scenario. It absolutely can. But because of the way all of this is written, the way it unfolds, it doesn't really read like reality. It reads like something completely exaggerated, almost like it's hitting every single possible male fantasy plot point. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that all of the claims here are fake, but it makes it hard to take everything we just looked at face value without serious scrutiny. That said, most people in the post-MeToo era aren't naive enough to ignore the fact that people can lie, that power dynamics do exist to a certain extent. I don't want to even sound woke because that is a woke talking point, but it is reality. Sometimes you find yourselves trapped in a situation where somebody will often abuse the power dynamics in order to get or coerce an action out of you that you are unwilling to act upon. Is that what we're witnessing here? I don't know. That's why I'm skeptical about this. And that's why I believe it's reasonable to be completely skeptical about this story. Because social media, as we've all come to experience in the last few years, is largely driven by perception. Outcomes start getting decided before any sort of facts are established. We talked about this in the shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, how both sides of the political aisle immediately defaulted to narrative building before any sort of facts were actually established. And that's just the sort of confusing, lie-driven media environment that we're currently living in. Every sort of story presents a new opportunity for the age-old cultural power struggle between competing ideologies and visions of the world and what the world should be to compete for your favor in real time, which is why I'm choosing to reserve my judgment and wait until all the facts are laid out. I think that's a perfectly reasonable position to have nowadays. I'm very skeptical about the facts, about where the truth actually lies. I can be against feminism and the cultural decay it has caused on American society without engaging in these sorts of gender dynamics games that are currently playing out, even if it's an inverted version of a feminist power game. Now, all that being said, everything we're seeing is hauntingly familiar. See, in Isaiah 3, God declares, "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them." These words describe a society under judgment, marked by reversed roles, failed leadership, and the breakdown of order. When those entrusted with authority abdicate their God-given responsibilities, the result is inversion and chaos. The immature and unfit seize power, discipline collapses, and the whole community suffers as a result. Now, this disorder is the direct fruit of weak men who have traded their God-given roles as leaders, protectors, and providers for low impulse control and immediate gratification. These are men with weak self-control, attempting to lead without the discipline required to do so. So they choose comfort over courage, accommodation over conviction, and convenience over responsibility because they refuse to rule their own passions and steward what was entrusted to them. So they now are being ruled by women and oppressed by the chaos that they themselves aided in creating. And that's exactly why we're witnessing this sort of grotesque inversion as it plays out in this story. Feminist tactics like MeToo'd accusations, which are largely rooted in cultural Marxist feminist dialectics of power and victimhood, now being weaponized often by weak men to shield their remaining assets, their productivity, their income, and their families. And this case is a clear example of what happens when the narrative is flipped, yet the same spirit of disorder remains. When men fail to guard what is theirs with disciplined, godly strength, something else will fill the void, forcing these weak men to resort to repurposing the very tools that helped create the collapse they're now trying to survive in, ironically enough. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.